Hello. So, now we will start lecture 11, that is introduction to alkaloids. So, till now I have discussed all the basic aspects of metabolism. Now, we are entering to a specific group to start with. So, we start with the alkaloids. So, the concepts what will be covered in this lecture are properties of alkaloids, pharmacological importance, precursor of alkaloids, major group of alkaloids and source plant and their active alkaloids. So, first of all I would like to tell that this lecture is introductory lecture. Here we will not start talking about the biosynthetic pathway. This I am giving you a general overview about the alkaloids and their different uses and their precursor molecules from where they originate. So, we all know that alkaloids are useful pharmaceutical important agents. So, they are used not only to treat human ailments, but also they protect plants against fungal. They are also using against fungal infection. They are also used as analgesic. They are also used as insecticidal, anti-diabetic, anti-malarial, and particularly plant alkaloids are basically being tested to treat a variety of cancer diseases, what is mentioning here. And the most common one is this vincristine and vinblastine, which is used for treating the leukemia patients, but apart from that there are other interesting molecules which are coming up. So, which are now being tested to treat different other cancers. So, now let me tell you the drastic pharmacological actions mediated by alkaloids. Okay. So, most of you have heard at least few names from this list. Morphine is analgesic, but it is also narcotics. Why narcotics? Because morphine can be acetylated and makes heroin, which is basically a drug which makes a lot of addiction. So, but morphine is a very strong analgesic. Okay. Mydriatics means basically atropine. So, atropine dilates the pupil. Mydriatics means the property to dilate pupil. Mitotics is basically it constricts the pupil. So, its pileocarpine is the name of the alkaloid. So, both are used for treating the eye diseases. So, the doctors they used to examine the eye tissue in detail. Hypertensive, that means when the blood pressure lowers down, then such drug will be administered so that the blood pressure will rise. Hypotensive means that normal blood pressure high, then such drugs to be applied which will reduce the blood pressure. Bronchodilator means then when you have problem in breathing because a lot of your lung is totally got choked with mucus. So, bronchodilator is basically dilate the those bronchial tissue. As a result of that proper respiration can be performed. And stimulants means strychnine, which has physiological effect on the body. Antimicrobial common compound is berberine and antitussive is codeine. So, which is basically called cough suppression. So, here is basically one photograph of a cough syrup containing codeine phosphate, and anti-leukemic is this vinblastine, so which I have already mentioned. So, now before we go to further details, let me just tell you the type of alkaloids. One is called piperidine, another is called pyrrolizidine, another polyhydroxylated, then phenyl alkylamine, then quinoline, then isoquinoline, so on. And then under this type of alkaloid, this means basically the structures. They have the typical structures. So, which I will show in the subsequent slides. And these are the alkaloids like conine, which is a component of the hemlock poison, which was used to sacrifice Socrates, famous philosopher. Okay. Aricoline you find in the betel nut, Cenosionin I have mentioned, so which protects the plant against insect attack. Lobelin is also a type of pyrolusidin alkaloids. Similarly, colchicine is also used nowadays for anti-cancer drug. Quinine, quinidine, these are used to treat malaria. Then morphine, codeine, these are all have this analgesic properties. Curare is again poison. Emetine, and this is basically emetine will promote vomiting. So, that if someone consume toxin, then that will help to release the toxin out from the body. Okay. So, this is one old plate. So, basically showing the hand diagrams of different alkaloid producing plants and the major alkaloid constituent which is present in this plant. So, I will not discuss that details, but this is a beautiful plate. So, that is why I have brought it here. So, here there is another group like indole alkaloids. So, one big example is vincristine, and which is produced by this Catharanthus roseus. Similarly, I have mentioned about this caffeine in the previous one of the previous classes, which belongs to the purine alkaloid. Now, let us look into the properties of alkaloids. So, alkaloids, the name actually indicate alkaline in nature, and they possess either a primary, secondary or a tertiary amine functional group. Okay. And some alkaloids exist as quaternary amine salt, and that makes them alkaloid as neutral, but otherwise alkaloids are mostly alkaline. And true alkaloids are basically derived biosynthetically from amino acids, and they contain nitrogen as a part of the heterocyclic ring, whereas protoalkaloids also contain nitrogen that otherwise arrange in the molecule, not in the heterocyclic ring. That is the difference between the protoalkaloid and the true alkaloid. And alkaloids can also be derived from other compounds such as isoprenoids, and these are called pseudoalkaloids. So, these are three terminologies: true alkaloids, protoalkaloids and pseudoalkaloids. Normally alkaloids are white colorless crystalline solid, and they contain oxygen. A minority of the alkaloids are oxygen free, and they exist as liquid. So, they include nicotine, conine and lobelin. So, they are basically the oxygen free alkaloids, and there are few colored alkaloids are also available, for example, sanguinarine and chelidonine. So, you must have heard about chelidonine. So, that is chelidonia. Chelidonine is used as a very popular homeopathic drug, and sanguinarine we will talk later when we will talk about this isoquinonyl alkaloid group and metabolic engineering. That will bring the issue of sanguinarine. Alkaloids are bases except colchicine and berberine. So, they are not basic in nature, and most alkaloids are soluble in organic solvents such as ethanol, ether, chloroform, but practically insoluble in water. However, if ephedrine and colchicine, they are water soluble alkaloids. So, these are the general properties of the alkaloids, and the alkaloids originate from amino acids. For example, conine, the one which is extracted from this plant, that is the precursor is lysine. For example, nicotine, what we find in the tobacco and the other species of Nicotiana. So, that originates from ornithine and aspartic acid. Cocaine, that is also belong to the tropane. So, that originates from ornithine, and quinine originates from tryptophan. Morphine, that originates from tyrosine, and caffeine, it originates from this purine, aspartate, glycine, glutamine, and whereas the other group which originates from lysine. So, what you see that the amino acids are basically the precursor for the alkaloids. Now, let us see the structures of pyridine, piperidine and pyrolusidine alkaloids. So, this color code putting arrow here. So, this is the example of pyridine alkaloid. So, this is the pyridine structure, and the next one is that green one which is indicating conine. So, this is piperidine. So, this is basically the structure of piperidine, and the pyrrolizidine alkaloid example is senesionin, and that is the example of pyrrolizidine group of alkaloid. Similarly, phenylalkylamine, quinoline, isoquinoline, indole. So, these are all different structural groups, and that makes the alkaloid family very diverse. This is the tropane, so typical tropane boat, and xanthine, which is basically the precursor, the molecule for the purine alkaloids, and so on. And here are some of the examples showing here. Now, tubocurin, so it is also a type of benzyl isoquinoline dimer. So, this is actually accumulated in this plant, which is a climbing shrub, which is called Chondrodendron tomentosum, and it is very toxic. It is basically paralyze the muscle, and this tubocurin, once it is extracted, it is basically carried for action using the bamboo shoot. So, that is why it is that name tubo is used. So, that bamboo tuber shoot tuber is basically used for carrying this alkaloid. So, this is very interesting, and now I will show you some typical alkaloid structure and the plant which produces. So, the atropine, this is a tropane. So, this is produced by Hyoscyamus niger, and it is anticholinergic. So, that means it controls the motion sickness also. In addition to that, atropine is used for dilating the eye pupil, and Cinchona officinalis, it is basically antimalarial. So, it is accumulated in the bark of cinchona, and this is the principal alkaloid compound, and this is Papaver somniferum or opium poppy. So, it produces both morphine and codeine, and I have also shown heroin here, which can be derived from morphine, and these alkaloids are very important from the pharmaceutical industry point of view. This is tobacco, which produces nicotine, and this is cocaine, which is produced from the plant called erythroxylon cacao, and this is the structure. So, here is basically a tropane ring, and basically then there is a benzene ring. So, this joins together and form the cocaine. So, this comes from Sikimate phenylalanine root, and this comes from the typical tropane pathway, and then it two joins, and this is the structure of caffeine, which you find in the coffee plant. And this is basically the potato glycoalkaloids. One is the solacidin, which is basically derived from cholesterol. So, and when the plants are young, they accumulate lot of glycoalkaloids, and then once they are started maturing, then these alkaloids getting transformed into non-toxic products. And this is senecio, this produces the senesionin pyrrolizidine group of alkaloid, and this is lupinus, which produces lupulin. This is another important alkaloid. And finally, this is Pileocarpus jaborandi, which makes the pileocarpine, and I have mentioned about this pileocarpine that is used for this constricting the eye muscle. And this is the famous Catharanthus roseus, which produces the anti-cancer alkaloids vincristine and vinblastine. So, this is basically the structure of vinblastine. So, the chemical structure of the most representative natural alkaloids, and they are semisynthetic derivatives used as anti-cancer agents. One is the colchicine. So, colchicine pathway has recently elucidated in last 2 years. So, we will talk about that towards the end of the alkaloid. And this is the Catharanthus roseus, how the plant looks in the field, and these two vincristine and vinblastine, these are called dimeric indole alkaloids. So, it produced through a long route starting from tryptophan, and then they are basically stored in the latex, and then they are used of course as this anti-cancer agents, but with time there has been semisynthetic derivatives. So, they have transformed using this skeleton, and they make certain derivatization that leads to the formation of vindesin, vinflulin and so on. So, these are also equally effective as anti-cancer agents, and the good point is that these derivatives are sometimes less toxic. So, they make less harm to the normal cells. Similarly, there is another species of Catharantha which is called Vinca minor. So, the color of the flower is like this. This also produced another alkaloid which is vincamin, which also has lot of pharmaceutical value. Now, vinca alkaloids and colchicines, basically they are having anti-cancer agents. So, basically they basically what they does, that they act on the microtubule, and they destabilize it, and as a result of that it blocks the mitosis, and like that way they perform its function. So, they will stop growing the cancer cells. So, now let us in brief whatever we have learned. So, let us look into this table. Tropane alkaloid, example atropine and hyoscine. Hyoscine means basically scopolamine, the another name is called hyoscine. It derived from ornithine. Sources are solanaceous plants like Dhatura, Atropa, Hyoscyamus, so on, and its pharmacological properties are one is ophthalmic preparation, another one is basically acetylcholine antagonist, and also it plays important role in controlling the motion sickness. Cocaine is used as local anesthetic, it is also additive, and ephedrine, its from origin is from phenylalanine, and it's basically vasoconstrictor as well as bronchodilator. Opium alkaloids have lot of applications in analgesic, although they are narcotic as well. Similarly, strychnine has specific application in respiratory stimulant in treating convulsion, and then vinca alkaloids are well known anti-neoplastic, that is anti-cancer, and they originate from tryptophan, and cinchona alkaloids also originate from tryptophan or phenylalanine, and they plays important role in treating malaria patients, as well as they are also treating cardiac patients as well. So, these are the major alkaloids, their origin, their source plants, and their pharmacological properties. Okay. Now, actually alkaloid synthesis is a very complex process, that is a job of the chemist. So, basically the amine and aldehyde, the first step is the accumulation of amine precursor, and then accumulation of the aldehyde precursor, and then these two join and form the iminium cations, and then which follows a Mannich like reaction, and then ultimately it forms different scaffolds. So, this is basically a typical route leading to the formation of tropane. So, this is basically the isoquinonyl group and so on. So, the reaction is very complex. So, this is of course the job of the chemist, but as a biologist, biotechnologist, we should have very brief idea that how the alkaloid synthesis starts. So, now let me show you, because I have mentioned that from cholesterol the potato glycoalkaloid solacidin is formed. So, basically it is showing the steroidal alkaloids. So, the precursor here is the cholesterol, from where it produces either through hydroxylation or O means oxidation, okay, or glycosylation. So, it produces alpha solanine, solacidin, and say tomatidin, alpha tomatin, all these things. So, these either by oxidation or methylation or reduction or glycosylation or acetylation or hydroxylation or even epoxidation. So, few of these reactions we will encounter when we will talk about the specific pathways. This is a benzyl isoquinoline group, although the example they have taken here is basically the Nilambo nucifera, so which is called sacred lotus. So, the intermediate compound is norcochlaurin. So, norcochlaurin, from norcochlaurin different compounds are formed as a result of methylation or oxidation, mostly methylation and oxidation. Okay. So, that means the P is converted into either P 1 or P 2 or P 3 depends on the type of the species as well. Okay. Similarly, now if you see into the indole, the strictocidin is basically the first point where two molecules like tryptamine and secologanin they joins by the reaction catalyzed by strictocidin synthase, and it makes the strictocidin. Strictocidin is a very active molecule, and from strictocidin different alkaloids, indole alkaloids are formed like vindoline, which requires oxidation, reduction, acetylation, methylation, like locnerine, it requires oxidation and hydroxylation, catharanthine, it requires oxidation and reduction, azamycin, it requires glucosylation, like this way. So, vincristine, vinblastine, they require oxidation, reduction, acetylation, methylation, and so these are dimeric. So, this is two monomer, one here, whereas vindoline is monomeric, there is only one monomer here, catharanthine is monomeric. So, this catharanthine and vindoline will joins and makes vinblastine, we will talk about that later. Azamycin also comes under monomeric. Locnerine is produced in the root of Catharanthus roseus, whereas these alkaloids are produced in the shoot, right. Horhamycin, that is also produced in the root. So, a parallel pathway also operating in the root, and it produces a diverse range of alkaloids in Catharanthus. So, now let us sum it up. Tropane alkaloids, the organ of biosynthesis is root, from there it moves into the shoot, and the plant species which producing the genera are these. Okay. Cenosionin, it is root and then it is transported into the shoot. Nicotine also it is produced in the root and then transported in the aerial part. Emetine also same. Sanguinarine, it is also same, root is the site of synthesis and then from there it is transported. For barberine, it is stem and the root bark, but caffeine it is the green tissue, whereas in quinolizidine alkaloids it is also the green tissue. Okay. Similarly, I have not shown here the example of the indole alkaloids. So, that requires also the green tissue. Okay. Now, storage of the alkaloids. So, leaf vacuole and latex vacuole. Leaf vacuole is basically the site for storing nicotine, hyoscyamin, azamycin, serpentine, catharanthine, scopolamine and cenosionin. So, this belongs to different group of alkaloids, I mentioned some, and with time it will be clear, it will settle in your mind. Now, it may looks a bit Greek, but you will slowly appreciate these names and you will understand. Similarly, the latex vacuole is basically sanguinarine, barberine, morphine, vincristine, vinblastine. So, they are there in the latex. Now, morphine actually it is in the poppy. So, if a poppy fruit is taken and then sharply incised using a blade, then the latex droplets are coming out. So, that contains morphine. Similarly, Catharanthus roseus, if a leaf can be broken from the plant, you will find from the leaf base the latex are oozing out. So, that latex contains this both monomeric and dimeric indole alkaloids. And the another interesting part is this, that these alkaloids are basically formation is influenced by the diurnal cycle. That means, the day and night plays important role in the synthesis of alkaloids. For example, morphine, the noon time is the best time where it accumulates, whereas for the nicotine it is the night. For tropane alkaloids from evening to midnight, okay, and whereas quinolizidine it is known to the early morning. So, as you see that the diurnal factor also influence the alkaloid formation. Okay. So, limited work has been done on that. So, there is lot of scope to explore these aspects. So, finally, before I discuss this slide, what I have said, let me sum it up. I have said the name of different pharmaceutically important alkaloids, their group, their basic structure, their chemical properties, okay, their origin, the amino acids, and their different transformation products and the span species it produced and the different applications, right. So, all these things we talk from our need. for the treatment of ailments and our need for that. But I will just bring the issue that these are all specialized metabolites. So, we human being are harnessing these alkaloids for our necessity, but plants are protecting these to protect them, plants are producing these alkaloids to protect themselves from specific enemies. So, here there are some examples like amytine is produced in Cephalocypica cacuana to protect from these, whereas coffea produces this alkaloid, purine alkaloid, to get rid of this sort of bugs, whereas lupinus also for this. So, here there are this a beautiful cartoon pictures, and from where they are basically indicating that the alkaloids produced in the specific plants are meant to protect the plants against biotic stresses. Okay. So, we must not forget that plants are producing for themselves, we human beings are exploiting this for our need. So, with this I conclude that no other group of natural products have contributed more to medicine and pharmaceutical preparation than alkaloids. So, alkaloids are the group which contributed maximum to the medicine and pharmaceutical preparations. So, that is why alkaloid is very important group, very complex group, and of course, very interesting. The biosynthesis are complex, but interesting, and there are several interesting metabolic engineering applications which we are going to see in the subsequent classes. With this, I will say thank you.